Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week we continue our summer film retrospective with the 1981 film Piranha 2: The Spawning. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, author of the upcoming Young Captain Nemo series from Fievel and Friends Macmillan Books. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, tech director at Rooster Teeth Studios, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Mr. Drew Edwards, editor-in-chief of HorrorMovies.net, writer for Rockabilly Online, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello, Drew.
Howdy. I don't know why I did that.
Howdy. And
Yeah.
finally,
So just
also
howdy.
as you wish. And also in Denver, as always, color commentary from attorney Julia Guzman of Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. All right, fellas. Piranha 2: The Spawning, also known as The Spawning, and Piranha 2: Flying Killers, is a 1981 Italian-American horror film directed unbelievably by James Cameron in his theatrical feature film directorial debut. It is the sequel to the 1978 Joe Dante movie Piranha. This is a heck of a film. It's a good film to sort of settle into after we returned from discussing Wicked City live in Dallas. And we already discussed Piranha. We discussed Jaws 3. So now here we are with Piranha 2. Let's go Drew, Joya, Tony, and then I'll see if I have anything to say. We'll start with Drew because I don't think we started with Drew in a while. So Piranha 2, give me your quick opening thoughts about this film, Drew.
It's kind of all over. It's a better poster than an actual movie. Like the poster for this movie is great. It's kind of weirdly tonal. I guess it's because you had Cameron come in and replace the director, and then Cameron was axed, and then the producer ended up directing parts of this movie. So it's an interesting movie because like you see like sort of the Cameron tropes starting to develop in places, but it's also got this like low rent, seedy Italian horror film vibe in a lot of other places, and tonally it veers from being like pretty straight faced to being extremely goofy, especially with all the side characters. And honestly, I think this movie is a testament to why other horror films of this time had, monster sequences or kills peppered throughout the movie, because there are long stretches of this movie that are frankly boring. All that being said, Flying Piranha, that's pretty cool. Like I don't hate this movie. I'm kind of lukewarm towards it. Like I haven't watched this movie since I was like a teenager, and I don't know if I would ever go out of my way to watch it again. Like I don't have that love for it like I guess I do for the original Piranha.
Understood. Joya, Piranha 2. Is this your first time watching Piranha 2, and what are your thoughts?
First and last time watching Piranha 2. I hate to be mean to a movie because I never know if, the people are going to listen in, and people work hard. And
you think James Cameron listens to the podcast? Because that would be awesome.
James Cameron I'm not concerned with, because we say lots of nice things about a lot of other James Cameron movies, but everybody else that worked on this movie, apologies to you, but I really hated this movie. This movie really, really was bad, and I did not enjoy it. Partly, I will say, because we didn't have as good. If we had bought I don't know if there is a Blu-ray of this movie, but if we had bought like a good copy of it, but we were watching an old copy of it, and so it was not a good. It wasn't good.
It was dark.
Quality.
It was really dark.
And so it was hard to tell what even was going on a lot of times, which might have been a blessing actually. But I just did not like the film. I thought that the dialogue was dumb. I thought the characters, for the most part, were dumb, and I thought the flying piranhas were super stupid. Oh my god. Anyway, so this was absolutely one of the least high quality lowest quality films that I've watched, and I'm curious to know. I know we started off before we even got on air with somebody saying this isn't the worst movie I've ever seen. I was like, what is the worst movie you've seen? So I'd like to get at some point into that conversation of what have you seen that is worse than this movie.
Oh, no problem, no problem.
Yep.
Yeah, Tony, it's your turn. Do you want to respond to that now, or you can respond to it later? But regardless, what are your thoughts about Piranha 2?
Well, maybe later. I mean, there's so much bad, terrible horror, and there's also so much, I've railed on it before, ironic, haha, this is the dumbest ever. Oh man, I can't remember that. I watched a vampire movie, which I started watching it, turned it the hell off, where there was a coffin flying that looked like it made if you ever seen like The Worst Witch, which Raina's been watching, any of the special effects on like not so high budget TV shows, it made that look like T2, to go back to Cameron. Like, I mean, there's so much. I don't want to call anything out, but yeah, this movie, like, they had an okay for this era budget, I think the movie's kind of fun. I don't think I would go out of my way to watch it very many more times. It's definitely like a drive-in movie. It would have definitely been one to watch on cable during my high school years, because it's got a lot of TNA, and it's flat out ridiculous. Although it does feel like, when you mentioned that, 3 different directors, it feels like I could use another third of it. Maybe not in length, but like something's on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
There's just weird, random meandering that happens that doesn't make any sense at all.
Well, supposedly James Cameron cut his own version of it, but he had to sneak in to do it because they'd already kind of fired him at some point. So
but the problem is, by that point, even when he was doing that, in that story that he's both confirmed and denied, that Cameron, although fired, came in to recut a version of the film. Even if he could do that, he wasn't filming the film anymore. So he's still got to deal with whatever footage the replacement Italian exploitation director was making, instead of Cameron. But thank you, Tony.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Did you want to sum that up?
Oh yeah, I think it's kind of, for a horror movie, this is certainly, like, I thought there was a lot of elements that are fun. I think it's got a lot that are there. This era, there were a lot of movies that are similar, and I don't think this is the worst. Although it does start off with some of the, like, when you are introduced to the characters, you pretty much want all of them to get eaten straight up.
Yeah.
Like, they're the worst.
Okay.
But anyway, we can get that. But yeah, I don't know. I thought it was fun. It's only $3, by the way, on Amazon Prime. So,
I guess we should have done that. Okay, my feeling about that is that I also thought that this was a great deal of fun. I've seen way, way worse horror movies, but I mean, what I liked about this movie was that there is a lot of comic relief, but the characters who are dealing with the plot of there being flying piranha don't joke about it. Everybody in the movie is taking it really seriously. I love the setting. In other words, there's a lot here that I kind of wish were like a 300-page novel by somebody like Stephen King or something like that, because I love the fact that it's all taking place at this resort. You got this marine biologist who's kind of given up her career and now just teaches scuba diving tours. She's in an estranged marriage with Lance Henriksen, who is a sort of semi-Coast Guard sheriff kind of dude who tools around.
He's a ripoff of the sheriff, of the
in
Sheriff
Jaws.
Brody character from Jaws.
Fabulous. I mean, Lance Henriksen is not joking around. He is taking this so seriously,
man. And by the way, Lance Henriksen is another one of those actors where he reached a certain Lance Henriksen age and look.
Yeah.
And then he earlier than probably a lot of people, but once he got there, he is forever Lance Henriksen.
Yes.
Well, he's not that yet in this movie, because I didn't recognize him. I was like, what? That's not Lance Henriksen. And then
he's almost
like,
hard to recognize.
It's also probably because he's playing a semi-normal human being as opposed to a robot or crazy redneck.
I just think he doesn't have that leathery face yet that he gets later on.
Because when we became aware of him, like when he's on. Okay, Aliens is just a few years after this, right? But like Millennium and all that stuff, that's 20 years after this. It's amazing when you think about it, Well, maybe not 20, but close. And so I actually enjoyed a lot of what's going on here. This movie is a lot more like Jaws, the original Jaws, just like Drew says. It's a lot more like Jaws than like Piranha, the original was. It's
That's such an insult to Jaws to say that this movie is anything like Jaws.
Well,
my
no, but
point
he's
is the
right.
plot.
He's right. It takes more beats from Jaws than Piranha does.
Yeah.
Piranha is more of its own thing than this.
It's
This
like a
is
very
more
poor spoof of
Jaws.
Here's the thing. I believe sincerely, and I feel like I might be ripping off Tony by saying this, but I believe sincerely there's no such thing as so bad it's good. There are bad movies, there are good movies, and sometimes I can watch a bad movie and I can find myself having a really great time. But I do not believe there's such a thing as a movie is so bad that it flips around to being good again. That's not a concept that I can get behind personally. So what is this? This is by no means what I would call a good movie, but it is definitely a watchable movie, and I have seen way, way, way worse movies than this, for sure. So when people say this is the worst horror movie,
stupider movies. Because the thing is, it's not that it's obviously there are bad movies that are bad because they're doing terrible things that you don't even see the point of why they're doing them, or they're just really gross or whatever it is. But this movie, it's like it wants to be a spoof, but it's not yet. It's not there.
do you really think so?
Well, I think the tonal shift is because you had too many cooks in the kitchen. I really do. Yeah. I know Cameron.
Yeah, recap us.
Allegedly,
right.
if this is to be believed, Cameron allegedly wanted to make this more. I have a harder time believing this because the stuff that's the most James Cameron-y about this is the more serious scenes. But yeah. James Cameron allegedly wanted to make this much more tongue-in-cheek and much more in the same vein as the original movie. But the Italian producers wanted more like an exploitation vibe with a like I guess semi-serious but with a sleazy tone, and they're the ones that kind of came in and added all the nudity and the stuff that looks like it's out of a Friday the 13th knockoff. Right. And I don't know if I fully believe that, because the serious stuff feels the most like a James Cameron movie. You have like this really strong, independent woman who has like this difficult relationship with her husband, and like she's really the heroine of the movie, and all of that stuff feels like it's taken out of the James Cameron playbook. Yeah. And
absolutely.
So I don't know if I fully believe that story, because I have a hard time thinking like James Cameron coming up with stuff that's meant to be silly. I just have a hard time envisioning him directing the scenes about the cougary lady trying to hook up with the young waiter. Like, I just don't see that's the stuff that came from Cameron. But maybe I'm wrong.
Wouldn't it be?
I mean, I don't know
if like he started to be like a comedy director, and then he directs this movie. And he's like, man, I really learned a lot from that Italian director. This is really where I'm heading. Like, he started out as like Cameron could have been like making Paul Blart Mall Cop, but when he does this movie and he's like, no, wait, my path is, I see it now, this is where I'm headed. I know that didn't happen, but wouldn't that be amazing? That would be like if on his deathbed he admits, I wanted to make so many comedies.
If any one of our listeners is more up on their James Cameron filmography than I am, I really would like to know like the full story about this, because I am by no means a Piranha expert as far as this film franchise goes. So if I wouldn't say exactly like I'm a super buff of James Cameron. I'm more like casually into his movies. But so like if any one of our listeners are like, yeah, I know everything there is to know about James Cameron, and they can just school me 9 ways to Sunday about this movie, I would love to know the making, because the stuff that I have read about the making of this movie is really interesting. And, like if anybody has like the full story, I would love to hear it. Please post it on the Facebook.
Really interesting and often contradictory, which is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
The one thing I'll say, just to get straight into this movie, unlike the last one that took place mostly in Texas, or all in Texas actually, this film takes place in an actual place you can go stay. By the way, in Ocho Rios, it's filmed in Jamaica, and it's all around this one resort. I mean, there's some pickups they did in Rome and some other places, but basically it's all around the seaside resort. And so all the characters we're going to meet are just kind of hanging around this community, which again is exactly like Amity. They've introduced yet another sort of world outside of our world, populated by people who cater to the tourist trade, which I am a sucker for that anytime at all. And you got two hyper competent people who we meet, which are Lance Henriksen as the helicopter cop, and his wife, and I'm blanking out on the name of the wife right now. It's Anne, played by Trish O'Neill. The first time we meet Anne, it is because this guy named Tyler, who is staying down the hall from Anne, she has a free hotel room as long as she works for the hotel. He wants to send her a note to take her on a date, and her teenage son intercepts the note because he gets the room service, and
because he's in love with his
Tyler
mom
had
and he
slipped
doesn't
a
want her to
note.
have any other.
Yeah,
here's the thing.
I'm glad to know that I'm not the only one that found this relationship hella
It's
creepy.
really creepy and weird.
Okay,
really weird
now,
relationship.
just this young man, he climbs onto his mom's bed and he's teasing her with this fish. She is filmed like an Italian sex pot, right? She's got this white sheet that's sort of strategically covering her as she kind of canoodles around in the. It is the weirdest, grossest scene. The way these two actors play these parts with one another does not indicate that they remember at all that they are supposed to be mother and son through the
It's
scene.
like Frank the Monkey level of weird.
It is golly. I mean, so Drew, I'm glad you picked up on this as well. That just completely that just made me go bonkers. I couldn't.
You know,
Yeah.
I just in its way, just as creepy as anything in Wicked City. Just saying.
Yes. I mean, I think the thing is when Chris and even when they're wearing clothes and they're standing around in the kitchen having breakfast or whatever, he stands way close to her and holds things so she has to reach for them, and he's doing all this flirty crap that it just is truly weird to me. Again, I think this is just poor direction. I think that the director didn't go, "Hey, whoa, you guys are forgetting that in the scene
I think the
you were
director's the one
playing."
who made those decisions, because whoever was directing at that moment, because a lot of it's not anything that the actors would have done. It was lines specifically and
or maybe this guy, or maybe the kid had a crush on Trisha O'Neill and he decided
That's
to be
where
a
my
close
mind is
talk.
going. Yeah, I agree. I think he's I like this girl. I think he's going to stand super close to her.
No,
and
no, because the thing with the bed, the way, like you said, that she's positioned, the fact that it takes place in a bed, that's all direction. That's not the kid.
You're right.
Well, let's not forget that it opens with the super creepy couple.
Yeah, that's super weird.
Yeah, who does that?
Okay,
who does that?
Well, and it's not awesome. I've never done it, but it's not. It doesn't sound like it would be awesome. Let me put it that way. She's like, no, it's amazing, and I'm like, how could that possibly be amazing? You're holding your breath while you're making out. The water can't possibly be comfortable to be doing what you're doing. It's the whole thing was just really creepy of them. Because I guess I sort of get the idea of why water could be sexy for somebody, but in this particular scenario where they're scuba diving and they're going to take off their stuff just to have sex, diva, I just thought it was weird.
But it's not just that. So they dive scantily clad into a rusty ship, which people keep going into this rusty ship without a wetsuit, which is crazy to me, or gloves or anything.
Oh, nobody wears wetsuits in this thing. The water is so shallow and I guess so warm that everybody dives just in their shorty shorts and a top if you're a female.
Well, I get that, but when it's a rusty, or there's piranha that are there, either way, they don't know.
Right? Are there. Yeah.
They go into the ship. It's supposed to be horror movies, so she's cut it, brings out a knife, oh no, but then she's gonna cut his underwear off. So now he's eventually, by the way, this is so danger filled that's what they get she gets off on. Okay, fine. Like, that guy's got to go back to the thing without any underwear, navigating the rest of that ship. I'm just like, no, don't. Come on, man. So then, of course, they get attacked by
shorts
piranha.
up on the boat, because it is just the two of them. It's not. There's nobody else on the boat.
Their boat, though, see, in the version we didn't see, Julia, there's an opening scene with them hanging out on a raft together.
Yeah,
so they don't have really a
it's
boat.
Just a raft, and there's like a voiceover, and then they dive down. And
yeah, but we saw that, and we did see that. And I'm just saying that's he could have like a pair of shorts that we just didn't see. That's on the
He's gonna go back to the hotel, and he's gonna be like sneaking behind potted palms until he can get
except for the fact that he gets eaten before he can do that. So
except he gets eaten.
Oh, well.
But we missed out
in the comedy version that Cameron had planned when he was a comedy director. It's him holding a flying piranha that's making crazy piranha sounds in front of him as he like sneaks around behind pots and stuff. Like, oh no, shh, piranha, quit flapping. Flap, flap, flap. By the way, I watched this with subtitles, and one of my favorite parts was it said something akin to like piranha flapping sounds or piranha flying sounds or something in the subtitles, and that made me laugh every time. Because it's like, oh, look, the piranhas are making flying sounds.
I still love. I mean, this is the same sound effect they had in the first movie with the dentist drills or whatever. That whenever they tell you that the piranha are coming, I love that sound effect.
But when they're flying, it says piranha flapping sounds.
So funny. No, the flying piranha were so dumb. Well, because they never even showed like it wasn't like they didn't spend any money to make a good flying piranha effect even once. All they ever have is people holding rubber piranha puppets against their throat, and I'm just like, this is so dumb.
Fly. I mean, I don't know what you wanted. I mean, like a herd of them to fly to the Valkyries.
I'll tell you what I wanted, because they did it eventually. James Cameron used the same idea for the face huggers and Aliens we were reading, and that is what I wanted. I wanted that effect, because that's a good effect.
Do you realize how much more money they had on Aliens than they had on this movie, though? It's like that's not even comparing apples and oranges. That's like comparing apples to cacti. Like I don't know. Like I get it. Like part of me kind of wishes that they had the money to like bring in like I don't know. Like he wasn't working at this point, but like Ray Harryhausen to do like a really cool like stop motion flying piranha. Like that would have been awesome in a very early 80s kind of way. This movie just didn't have that much money.
It just doesn't matter to me. I mean, like for instance, there's a shock. I hate to jump ahead to this, but there's a shock when one of the piranhas sticks its little piranha head out of a body that it's been hiding in. And that
was very
really
alien.
grody. That works for me. I bought that shock. I wasn't troubled by how silly the piranha puppets look. I mean, it doesn't bother me as long as the actors aren't acting like the puppets suck. In other words, to some extent, what I have to appreciate is that everybody's carrying on as though this is a completely sensible drama, except for the comedy bits with the cougar who's chasing the waiter, or with the girl who's looking for a doctor. All that crap.
Yeah, the gold digger. Like that's
all that stuff
like,
is from.
Okay, it does kind of bother me. This is my 21st century liberal guilt. It does kind of bother me that all this really broad, goofy comedy is based around like tropes from almost like these characters wouldn't seem out of like if these characters were in like a 50s movie. It's funny. I think I would be completely fine with it. I'd almost be charmed with it because like it would. Like neither one of those characters would seem out of place in like a Marilyn Monroe comedy or something.
They fit in the Marx Brothers. I mean, it's like
but for some reason, like you put this in a movie that's a little more modern, and I'm just like, oh man.
There was no relief in the comic relief in this movie, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I guess it's because it's also not actually funny. Like it.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's all very forced.
It's all 80s boner comedy stuff. Like
yeah,
if you watch like
it's meatballs.
It's like Meatballs, Joystick. It's like any of that, or like any movie where like a young dude is gonna be a male prostitute or like rich women, whatever. Any of those tropes where like there's 80s boner comedies. That's where these characters came from. It's like they were in another thing and they all went to the resort where hijinks happened, and we're seeing that like in between. We're seeing all the parts where like, oh no, I've got to sneak past my dad, except my dad is the guy who's the nerd. It's also all of the nerds from those boner comedies. One place.
Thank you for bringing that up.
There's a lot of these really broad type characters in the Friday the 13th franchise, but they don't live as long. And I think that this is a good argument as to why those movies work, and this movie doesn't necessarily work as well as it should. Is they know, like, you can have like a character that's just basically an archetype as long as you're not subjected to them for that long. Like the Friday the 13th films have the good sense to bump these people off almost as soon as they introduce them.
I know it makes me terrible, but I still, now that I have this thread in my head and I picture this early James Cameron, who's a comedy guy, like the reason that they don't get killed, which I instantly wanted all of them dead. Like they could have gotten eaten. The Piranha could have all flown out in the first 10 minutes and just
most of them actually
every one of them. Dead. I would have been happy. But I almost want this to be where he just could not cut them. Like he's like, no man, I'm making a boner comedy with flying fish, and then he's like, no, it has to be sleazier. I'm an Italian director, and we have to have gore. And he's like, no man, you don't understand. The cougar has to chase this guy. The woman has to get their doctor and be an annoying like New York accent. All of that stuff. Like I want to just see Cameron fighting tooth and nail. Like, you don't get my vision. And then as soon as he has this terrible dream that he sees the Terminator, he's like, and then I saw where the Italian director was going. I don't regret that I made this movie. I regret that I couldn't keep more of the boner comedy people. There's like an hour more of that on the cutting room floor.
Well, Joe Dante has said that he's going to make Titanic 2 as revenge for this movie.
Oh, that's a funny idea.
Oh, if he could combine with Piranha and Titanic 2.
Hell yeah.
That would be amazing.
Especially if they fly. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, okay, I know. You combine everything. There's this weird Russian unobtainium that is trapped on the Titanic, and these guys have to go down and fuse the two parts of the Titanic so that then they'll be able to match up the Titanic with the map that they have and find the unobtainium, but there are flying piranha on it.
And flying orcas.
Yeah. So
no man,
so then
flying piranha are freed when they hit the iceberg. They were frozen in there from prehistoric time.
All this is good. Yes. And if it has flying orca, I'm also down with this. Anyway,
can I just mention? Here's the thing. Here's what's interesting. First of all, by the way, about the boner comedies, I'm totally in agreement with what you're saying, and it makes me all the more impressed that a movie like Dirty Dancing has everything that you talked about. It has the resort, it has the family, it has the sneaking around, and yet somehow it, with a great deal of maturity, just sort of sidestepped all that crap and managed to turn in
dances around it, you might say.
Yes, indeed. It dances around it. But I also wanted to say, in this movie, you have all those crappy characters, but the main characters are really interesting. Like this Jamaican dude who fishes with dynamite, who's old friends with the married couple that's made up of a marine biologist and a tough cop. You got a disgraced like CIA scientist who's also kind of a waka waka scuba diving womanizer. It's these are actually reasonably well-rounded characters, but then in the background you've got like all those things you were talking about, plus an incredibly offensive homosexual stereotype who's running the club. And I mean, this guy is like something out of a late 70s, Italian sex movie where you've always got the irritating gay guy who runs the hotel and says annoying things.
That dude will lick his lips at everything.
Yes.
Oh
my God.
Come on, man.
And yet he's also a blatant ripoff of the mayor from Jaws.
Absolutely. And in fact, when you think about it, if the mayor from Jaws had been a flaming queen, that actually might have been interesting. So it's that's what we're doing. In my mind, this guy is actually wearing a lavender neckerchief. Even though I don't think he actually is. I think he's wearing a white Mr. Work suit. But in my brain, he has a lavender neckerchief like that he put on in 1976 and has not has not removed in all that time. Uh, that's a deeply offensive character. I like today you would never do that character. Never. I at least I don't think so. I think people would have
in
a
a
sense.
I don't know, man. I just watched the pilot of Riverdale last night, and Kevin Keller's played pretty broadly in
He is
that. I
pretty
mean, I don't know.
broad. It's
Maybe
true.
he might get better because it's a TV show and they have time to develop the character. But
Kevin Keller's pretty
I
broad, but he's still a good guy, and he's not. It's not evidence of Kevin Keller's twistedness that he is gay. Kevin's one of the nice guys on that show. This guy is deeply annoying, and I know you're supposed to go. Plus, it's just so annoying how gay he is. To my mind, that's what's
no,
going on.
that's fair. That's fair. That's
Yeah.
fair. I think you're absolutely right there.
What a weird trope that came out of that era. It's
Yeah.
still just like you'll see it a decent amount in horror and certain dramas. Like, yeah, I mean that's definitely something we could leave behind, and also just what a weird choice for all of that at the time.
I mean, I think clearly, look, horror movies have always been about exploiting people's fears. And I think an exploitation director would tell you, look, I don't care how offensive it is. If it's something that people are going to be a little bit mildly afraid of, I'm going to use it, whether it's Nazis or people being afraid of gay people or people being afraid of black people or whatever. I'm going to exploit that.
Well,
And
and I think that is the dialogue that we're in this country right now, which is at what point do you shut the hell up about whatever you're afraid of if what you're afraid of is just wrong? Like
Yeah.
you don't get to be afraid of gay people anymore. That's just not okay. So you got to just be quiet about it if you are, because you know what I mean. Like that's just, I don't know. So that's my question.
Very
Is
good point.
in when you're talking about art or media or whatever you want to call what this is, to what extent do you need to just not be afraid of gay
Okay,
people?
do you remember
Even just like
Love at First Bite? We did Love at First Bite. Oh, so long ago that I almost wish that we could do it again because it was so good.
Oh,
But
please
but
don't.
but I should just start doing repeats. Like literally at the second half of every week, just put up a repeat for some of the movies we've done in the past. Because Love at First Bite, one thing I thought was really interesting is how that movie is, I thought, really funny, but it has some way racist humor. Like they really play up how out of place George Hamilton is in Harlem, and the black characters in that are scary and or funny because they are black characters. It is the strangest thing. Unlike Animal House, which does much the same thing, but is playing with the fact that these sort of coddled white people are just simply out of place. In Love at First Bite, I think it's a decent film, but there's a moment there where it goes deeply racist, and it's really strange. Yet another
Well,
thing that you would never do today.
I think we're talking about the gay character who you said wicked gay man. Like I
Yeah.
think the way you sidestep this is you give the character, first of all, you make the character actually interesting, and secondly, you give them some kind of agency within the story instead of them just being a big old trope. Like, there's a much
Yeah.
earlier film that we discussed, which is Bride of Frankenstein, and Dr.
Yes.
Pretorius is basically the wicked gay man in that movie, and
Absolutely.
he's
Yeah.
fascinating and he's a beloved film character, whereas like this character is a terrible, forgettable stereotype, and I'm sure it's probably one of the reasons why James Cameron doesn't want to be associated with this movie.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Yeah. Go ahead, Tony.
Oh no. Well, I mean, I was just saying made by vastly different directors. So,
Yeah.
like
Well,
That's-
I mean, James Cameron. It is important to note James Cameron says that he does not consider this to be his first true film. Like he tried to get his name taken off of it and couldn't because of Directors Guild rule. So
Well, I
feel for him because like even though I don't hate this movie the way Julia does, I don't think that I would want this to be like my calling card if I was trying to break into an industry.
Right.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, it's a good point.
I mean, disowning it later though, it's like, yeah, man, I was one of 3 directors. It was weird. How about that Terminator? You know what I mean? Like, I think there comes a point where you kind of put it in perspective, or you should maybe.
Well,
Absolutely.
I think,
and he has at various times. Go ahead.
I think honestly, seeing the Cameron stuff emerge from like the crappy stuff that we've been talking about is what makes this movie interesting. Like I could never watch this movie just to watch this movie. I like watching it, seeing like the proto Cameron stuff in it. Like that's what makes this movie watchable to me. Like it's not just the fact that they're flying Piranha, like I really do see a lot of the Linda Hamilton character in the Terminator films in the character, the female lead in this film.
Yeah. One thing I like about Anne, and I was thinking about this over and over. In other words, I was again treating it as though it were like some cool novel I were reading. I love that this character, unlike say myself, is completely as comfortable underwater with scuba gear and very little else on, wandering around things that are like surrounding her, above her head, below her head, to her sides. She is as comfortable in that environment as she is walking down the hall in the hotel that she works in. This is a human who is very different from me, and I just found that fascinating. That she's this like hardcore underwater scientist type person. I could watch lots of movies about somebody like that, and there aren't very many. To be perfectly honest with you, there aren't a lot of movies with people who are that fascinating. And so the fact that Cameron's taking his time to show stuff like that, I really dig all of that. But okay, we should jump to some of the better bits. I'm sorry, Tony, did I step on you?
No, well, I mean it segues into when we first find out something's amiss. She's swimming around with her crew that is also full of idiot tourists and jerks, and she brings them all down. And they are like, "Hey, we want to go inside." And that's where we, somebody gets eaten. We find, more people who have gotten chomped on. We find a couple. They bring them all back, and they've got. I mean, the gore there is actually like, as far as horror movies go, all of the prosthetics and all of the stuff where they've been eaten. It is weird though because there's supposed to be piranha who just strip the bones clean.
Yeah.
In every piranha thing that we've ever seen, and growing up, again, we're talking about piranha and quicksand and all that last time, like. Piranha, what made them just so ferocious was like, oh, well, they can strip a body clean of meat in X time and there'll be nothing but bones. These piranha are totally content when just like, I'm not hungry anymore. You guys want
just
some?
a couple bites? Yes.
I'm full, man. Like, I know I'm a huge piranha, several times larger and able to fly, but man, humans are really filling. We should leave some for later.
First of all, these piranha.
I think they're just homicidal maniacs. I think they just like killing. They don't really need. They don't kill. Yeah. They kill for sport, not for food.
Okay, let's talk about these piranha for a second.
Of piranha, like a lot of animals.
So the piranha are not quite the same piranha we had earlier. These are a special batch that were prepared by the Army. They are the size of a largemouth bass. Okay, they are much bigger than a piranha.
Why isn't there a Billy Bass piranha? And can I sell that? Because now I'm picturing in my head, it would be so amazing.
You should totally make one of those. At least render one.
Oh my God, Tony, awesome. Those things are so easy to manipulate. Just buy
Tony,
one.
please do. Hey, make a CG Billy Bass piranha.
I wonder.
All you got to do is just give it goddamn fangs, and then it'll sing to David Byrne with its little fang teeth flapping. That's a brilliant idea.
You have to have it make the noise. Like you have to be able to replace the sound.
Yeah. You can do it. I have faith in you.
I have a feeling that's
Blu-ray release. Whoever's doing the ultimate Piranha 2 Blu-ray release, that should be the special box set. Is a Piranha 2 Billy Bass that's like ferocious looking with the wings flapping.
Yeah. Open its mouth and go. Yeah, exactly. Okay. and further, not only are they, they're large and they have wings and they're, they don't look like piranha, um, but also they've been dumped here. These are not even the ones in theory that escaped to the ocean from the past movie. These ones all live in one spot. For some reason, these piranha stick around this sunken ship, this reef,
That's the
basically.
weird
This,
part.
yeah. The conceit of this movie, which is strictly for convenience, that is it. All right. There's the cave has a monster in it. In this case, there is a sunken ship that the people like to dive around this hotel. And by the way, if you're at a hotel like this, there's every chance that what they did was haul in an old ship and just drop it there, because that way it forms a new reef and little fish like to go around it and it's fun to dive around. That's very normal. So that's where these piranha are hanging out. So we can assume, for whatever reason, if there was dialogue for this, I missed it, I apologize, that somehow, I don't know why these piranha are hanging around here. Maybe a barrel of piranha got dropped into this
There were
ship. I don't know.
There were 3 drops of eggs. They found 2 of them. One of them became these piranha.
Okay.
Tyler says that later.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, anyway, so that's what's going on. It means that throughout the action of this movie, the fish are sticking around this boat. They come out of the boat and don't go very far. They'll go up to the beach, but if you want to kill them all, since they tend to retreat to the boat, if you can manage to attack the boat at the time that they're all there, for reasons, again, that makes no sense, then you can blow them all up. And indeed, later on in the movie, that's exactly what's going to happen. But it takes a while for us to figure out that there are flying piranha around. So just so we understand, these are the plots. You've got Anne is investigating the piranha because they ate one of her students, and she immediately is pretty certain that there's something bad in the water, and she wants to get
She's
her
going to go
boss.
check it out herself, because that's
Yes.
what we do when something kills somebody that
But
we
she
know.
does want to get her boss the offensive gay stereotype to close things down. She just wants to bring in some proof, though. Meanwhile, Lance Henriksen is investigating, and their son has taken a job on a yacht, basically, to make some money. But the guy who runs the yacht is an idiot, but he has a hot daughter, and so we have the love affair of those two. That's pretty much the plot in a nutshell. As the movie goes through, this is where you can see sequences happening. The movie goes through sequences, so that like there's a big sequence, like in about the middle, the second half of the middle, where the fish finally make themselves known. And okay, what is the event that they are doing where they're all going to go out and look at these fish that crawl up on the sand? Did anybody catch the name?
That's actually the spawning.
The spawning.
Spawning. That makes sense. Duh.
Is it them or is it like turtles? Because
it's
a
fish.
particular
Some kind of
type of
special
fish that mates on the beach during this time of year, and then people will go up and like snatch them out of the shallow water, and they fry them up and eat it. And the hotel does that every year. But of course, this year the water is not just filled with these particular fish, but of course our favorite, the flying piranha, attack, and wackiness ensues.
Again, one of the dumbest scenes, because it's just like, I don't even know what to say about it, because it's just so inane to go, let's come up with a reason why all the humans would just walk up to the water's edge. I know, they'll just be watching for other kinds of fish that would come out. Like, I don't know, it's just the whole thing. I would have rather it have been like maybe 4th of July and they're all like watching fireworks.
You don't think that's a thing that the fish spawn? Like,
yeah, I believe it.
I believe all the things that are incredulous about this movie, that I have to say, that's not.
No, they're all incredulous equally. It's not the one thing. It's one of the many things.
I completely believe that there is a species of fish they call it the grunion, that comes up out of the water and makes it easy to catch. That would not surprise me at all that such a thing would happen, and that a coastal hotel would make a big event out of it. Totally believe that. I also believe because people are.
Like,
what'd you say, Tony?
Yeah, it's a thing. Grunions are a thing, and there's all kinds of touristy crap that, hey, you're here. Here's, we're going to have an excuse for you to drink. Because, he's doing things like, well, the first drink is free, blah, blah, blah.
Yep. Incidentally, apparently there's an episode of Three's Company called Larry's Sister, the 12th episode of the 7th season, where multiple characters are going on grunion runs, where they are going to go out and catch these fish. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
Except in that,
it's a thing. Fine, whatever.
And if they talk about it on Three's Company, it has to be true.
Of course
John Ritter never told a lie, ever.
Well, this is Larry. He told even more lies than Jack did.
Oh my God. I'm just saying that there is some textual precedent for the grunion, and it's Three's Company. No, this is a real thing. I'm sorry. We've probably got listeners who are like marine biologist people who are going, God, you people, ugh, I can't. They're gonna be so angry at us for not knowing about this.
No,
anyway,
I mean, if we're gonna go into bad marine biology, supposedly the piranha can fly because their genes have been spliced with flying fish, but the way they fly around, that's not at all the way flying fish actually work.
Right.
I mean, come on. So, like, if we're going to complain about the science of this movie, the grunion, like, that's pretty far down on the list. If we're gonna complain,
I like the idea that Jason's concerned about the Anns of the world being disappointed with our podcast.
That was me. I was the one who was concerned about that. Yes.
These fish, they fly around like bats, basically. They flap
I would have been happier if this movie had been about bats. I think this movie should be about bats instead of flying. Because the fact is, they're not flying piranha. They're actually not. They're actually not flying piranha. They are, because the guy who's got the hots for the kid's
Tyler.
girlfriend mom, he said that it was one of the what is he, CIA or something? One of the people who was in charge of creating this weaponized animal. That was a combination, it was a crossbreed of several different animals, the piranha and some other kind of bird, who knows. Yeah. But anyway, so it's not even a piranha, it's a new animal, and they should call it I'd rather call it a GMO than a piranha, because it's just a weird creature that flies through the air and attacks people. But, I don't know.
But you see, the Italian producers wanted to make this a sequel to an already successful film, so they need to be
right. Yeah, that's the only way that anybody watched it, I guarantee you.
I don't know. If you were young, look, it's got boobs, so that's not the only reason why people.
Actually, literally, someone on my Facebook wall asked. I said, I saw that I was watching this, and he said, "Is it any good?" And I said, "Define good." And he said, "Tits?" Question mark. And my response to that is, well, there is nudity, so you are in luck.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And by the way, somebody who's not 14, one can assume.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a grown person.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
It's a grown human being.
Seeing this on cable, it would definitely be like, well, guess what? It's got boobs, so it doesn't matter. Seeing it now as an adult, you're like, okay.
Yeah, because
that doesn't matter as much, I guess. Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't. I'm not going to judge. I'm just throwing it out there.
It just seems like it shouldn't be a prime motivator in your flying fish movie. But okay.
For the director,
Jake says
there's
two middle-aged men.
All right. Yeah. So best scene, honestly, I think, is when they sneak into the morgue. So Anne wants to prove that there's piranha out there or whatever it is. She wants to look at this body. She sneaks into the morgue with her date, because this is a hell of a thing to do on a date. Tyler, who turns out, by the way, to be a secret army scientist, whatever. They sneak into the morgue to check out this body. They get kicked out, and that's when you get the best shock, which is the one I mentioned earlier, which is that this body on the morgue that's been torn up by fish, the nurse is there by herself, and this little fish goes, and it sticks its little, well, really giant big mouth bass mouth out of the body cavity of this, and jumps on her and chomps her neck. I love that stuff. I'm good with all of this. And then and then of course somehow Lance Henriksen has the galls to still think that maybe his wife murdered this nurse whose mouth has been torn away. I mean her neck, which I cannot imagine how he looks down at this woman who's had her neck torn away, probably by some kind of animal, and goes, "Well, clearly, clearly my wife did this," because that's his immediate.
That's what you call a nasty divorce. You're willing to be like, I know, yes, Your Honor, I'm pretty sure it was her. She was last seen there. I think you should put her away. I mean, she's obviously can rip a nurse's throat out. I would like custody.
Yeah, isn't that hilarious? Oh my God. And this is a very, so let's talk for a second about the fact that they never are very clear with us as to what the hell is going on with these people. I think that they are estranged on the way to getting a divorce. I guess they call one another still their husband and their wife, but clearly they're not living together. She's dating other people. It is an odd presentation of a marriage. I mean, to say the
likes his
least.
son, so it's not because his son is a creep.
Right.
It's
Right,
some kind of
exactly.
edible thing.
He's
Like,
he's fine with
he
all
still
that.
gets along with his son, so
Yeah.
it's not he's not creeped out by their relationship. So it's totally something else.
It is, you know, in the world of action directors like Cameron, marriages often fall apart because the husband is just such a damn workaholic that even the people he loves are eventually driven away because they need more companionship than that. I guess that's what's going on. I don't know. It's completely whatever was there to explain what's going on in their relationship was left on the cutting room floor or never shot at all, because they're married, not living together, not divorced yet, and she's dating. Okay, maybe it's just that snapshot of time in their life. And in fact, at the end, we go back to the TV trope of
families reunited now that
the new boyfriend has been killed, and so
new
now
boyfriend has been killed. Crisis is averted. Family reunited. Yep.
I mean, ultimately, this is an early '80s horror film. I mean, you know, all divorced couples in '80s horror films will end up back together by the end of the movie. Them's the rules.
By the way, if you look at the piranha coming out of the body in the morgue, and then side by side it with the chest burster stuck in the thing, it's pretty uncanny. It's pretty weird. Like,
I bet it is.
Like, he may disavow this movie, whatever, but yeah, when you see a chest burster, like somebody saw something.
He didn't
like,
direct
totally
Alien.
different. No, I mean,
the chest burster, that's Ridley Scott.
Right. But I'm saying, if you look at the two, like, it's pretty crazy how
similar. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that
it's covered in blood like that. Yeah.
Pretty bizarre to see them side by side. Like,
yeah, and it's only like a year later, so there's plenty of time to be influenced by the chest burster. I mean, for sure, you know, and because that movie came out in late 1979. This movie comes out, when is this? This movie comes out in December of '81. So that's 2 years that he has to see Alien and work it into what he's doing. Absolutely. Pretty amazing. And by the way, I can't think of anything prior to that. I can't think of, maybe I'm missing something, but if you guys can think of any scene where something living comes out of a dead person in a horror movie prior to Alien, I it's not coming to mind for me. We get a lot soon after that, you know, like all of the bugs coming out of the Neat Freak in Creepshow, for instance. But I can't think of them before.
So
I mean, maybe the late.
I don't know these films, but it seems like maggots are pretty common early on. But I don't know.
Yeah, but you never see maggots actually. I mean, this is gross, but you never see maggots actually sort of emerge from somebody. You know, that kind of level.
Prior to the 1980s, did we really have a lot of films that had, like, I think the reason you started to see this from the late 70s on is because the technology was finally there. I mean,
you're absolutely.
You know, a big reason why a lot of these horror films were made during this time period is because makeup effects and animatronic effects just had a big bump up, from the late 70s on into the 80s.
Right. No, that's a really excellent point. I think you're right. In fact, I think also there's this thing where, as any new like big trend in technology comes along, you'll have a new set of essentially everything. Be it new 3D or new kinds of computer animation or whatever. You have to remake everything just to test out the technology on your werewolves or or whatever it is.
Not that necessarily this movie has a lot of that technical skill on display. Like, a lot of it is hokey looking, but the as Tony said, the scene in the morgue is it's effective.
Yeah, well,
it really is.
All the underwater bits where you have people torn up.
That's so good. And the underwater really stuff.
Great. I mean, that's where,
and it's well lit.
Yeah, that's where all their money kind of went in a lot of like, as far as a horror movie goes. That's, if you're gonna spend it, all of that, all the fake bodies, all the gore, all the chewed up parts look pretty gross and are pretty effective that way. Which, that's not always the case in a horror movie.
It would have been nicer though if that's the kind of thing where I think I'm more along Julia's line of thinking. Like, they should have spent a little bit more money on the actual flying piranha. Like, they should have had some like cool animatronic looking ones and some cool stop motion ones. Like, there's stuff you could have done to make them look cooler. They don't look like, I think about this. This was a movie that I would always pass in my video store as a kid, and it took me a long time to actually work up the nerve to rent it because I was scared by the cover. Because like the poster for this movie is amazing and creepy and cool, and the flying piranha in the actual movie are just not that cool looking.
So yes, I agree. So like the part where they decided, they go on the Grunion Run and the piranha come out because it's nighttime and that's what they do. Because during the daytime they have to watch their stories back at the ship. And the guy is fighting piranha.
I just love that image of them just sort of going according to a schedule and going, okay, fellas, back we go.
Yeah, well, that's what they're banking on by the end of the movie. It's one of the dumbest.
Yes.
Anyway,
it is ridiculous that the piranha even get back in time to get blown up. Like they seem to be pretty spread out there on the shore, eating all the people. I don't know why they decided to go back to that ship.
I mean, you got to catch the Today Show. I mean,
they just do. It's just the
role
in the movie.
But
they made it.
Guys fighting off piranha, but it would have been so much cooler, like you said, if it would have been a swarm of them, like an actual swarm swarming around. That would have been way cooler. And also, it doesn't make any sense because they all like just kind of watch him. Nobody lets him in. Nobody's like, hey, come back. It's like I said, it feels like there's like another 20 to 30 minutes that kind of bridges everything, but maybe not because it had such directors, but it just kept feeling like there were bits missing. So like before this, Aaron, one of the hotel guys, Jamaican guy, gets eaten, but there's no really good reason. And then the guy, his son gets killed, and that's really effective and grotesque. And you get like, oh man, but he instantly starts making these bombs, but you don't get a real sense. You're like, he's making bombs. Like, and when they hatch their plan to go blow it up, like there's not a real good through line. Like, you don't have to have everything force fed to you, but there's a lot of effective ways to forward that revenge plot and make it coherent what everybody's plan is. They meet, and again they meet with the hotel guy and they're like, hey, cut this out. It's not until he doesn't even get eaten, does he?
I can't remember if the hotel guy gets eaten.
In one of these, you'd have him getting eaten as a ha, you should have listened. But he just kind of doesn't show up for the rest of the film. Yeah. And then they decide, since that guy gets eaten, the guy makes the bomb, since he gets eaten, they have to take it upon themselves to go visit the daytime piranhas and blow them up by 6:30. Also, the side story of the kid who now has a new love that's not his mom. Maybe that's enough like his mom to not make it too weird for him. And they've gone off.
Dear God.
And they're coming back. They have weird dialogue too. It's so weird. But Lance Henriksen has to try to go get them, which I love the fact that he's trying to save his kid. He knows what's going to happen. He's like, you can't be close to this boat at 6:30 because everything's going to blow up.
Yes.
He's in a helicopter. He doesn't get close enough to the water. He's got a helicopter, so he can go down. It's not a plane where he has to circle it, right?
No, this is so dumb. This part.
He doesn't
God.
lower the helicopter down. He just jumps off the helicopter.
Unless the helicopter wreck and explode. Why does it explode? It's hitting the water. It shouldn't explode. It should just go into the water and like sink. That was so dumb. I was like, really?
No, that part made me laugh because it's just none of what you do with a helicopter is anything like what he does with that helicopter.
Nobody's ever done that. Ever crashed a helicopter in order to get onto a boat that may or may not even be able to turn back on again.
Yeah. I really have no idea. I mean, again, somebody in the know could be listening to this show and go, "Oh, I've ditched helicopters in order to effect a water rescue." I have no idea. I don't know.
No,
you know?
No. I'm willing to stake at least $100 on it.
Okay.
All right. Well, don't call, nobody. None of the listeners call me out on that because I don't have $100 to spend. But no, I don't think that has happened.
He doesn't throw them a rope, or he doesn't do.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. No, that was so dumb. That was almost as dumb as the woman running out into the water and pretending to drown so that a doctor would save her. Which may have been the dumbest thing in the whole film.
Even she would be like, "Don't ditch the helicopter, dude." Like, I mean, what are you, crazy?
What did you think though? At the same time that those two characters are having the dad and the two kids. Meanwhile, you've got the two new lovers, as it were, Anne and Tyler, are planting the bombs left behind by the grieved dad who makes bombs. So they're planting the bombs, and luckily, the way this ship is laid out is there's a whole hallway that they can swim down that the fish are on the other side of these gratings, but they can't get into the hallway to eat them, which is lucky, so they can crawl down and place their charges and then turn around and crawl away, except at the last minute, Tyler, who is tainted, of course, because he is an army chemist who was involved in making these things, he gets stuck, and so he's sacrificed and gets eaten by the fish. All right, check this out. Before the explosion, there is a really neat stunt. This is a really darn neat stunt, okay, truly. She's down there and she's like, "Oh, I got to get out of here because the bomb's about to go off." And she notices the anchor of the boat that Lance Henriksen is driving is starting to move because he's taking the kids on the boat and moving away. And she grabs this stunt lady grabs onto an anchor as it is. I mean, that thing could cut you. It could tear off her arm. I mean, it's dangerous. She grabs it and then it drags her up and to safety. It's amazing. It's a good stunt. That was that was pretty cool.
James Bond style stunt.
Yeah.
No, that was cool. Of that part is pretty, like, other than the ridiculousness of the piranha just kind of hanging out and then be like, "Wait, we're all in the rec room and you've disturbed our foosball. I guess we're mad now."
They hadn't finished their Three's Company episode yet. They were
and so they get angry because he's disturbed their stories in their rec room time, and by planting bombs.
Like, look, he's on the
So they chase him down, and all that's like actually pretty effective. Like, them trying to break through, them chasing him. I mean, it doesn't make any sense animal behavior wise. And maybe there's there's the Anns of the world. Like, actually, X, Y, and Z fish do just kind of hang out during siesta time or whatever. I don't know. Maybe that. I mean, we could be wrong, but.
All you need is one scene of dialogue where she explains all of this, and we would buy it. We'd go, "Oh yes, these fish are known to just hang out in one spot until the sun goes down." Fine, I'd take that.
These fish didn't exist until.
So now they're vampire flying piranhas. Are you telling me?
Yeah, if they
would
were
explain.
But they need to be bats. They needed to be bats. Maybe the movie was written to be about bats. Is it possible it was written to be about bats, and then, like you said, the people decided, "Oh no, we should capitalize on the piranha wealth."
I don't think so. I think, but it would have worked better if they had been spliced with bat, because bats are scary. And piranha are scary, so a bat piranha hybrid would have been pretty cool, in my opinion.
If it was also a spider,
doubly scary.
If it was also a spider,
let's just make an ultimate.
What?
It's like Niles Crane said on Frasier, where he goes, I've been thinking, if less is more, then wouldn't more be even more? And I think that's which is
What'd you call him?
mantra.
Niles what?
Niles Crane.
Oh, Niles Crane. I thought you said Green. I was like, that's not his name. Yeah, Niles Crane. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, but that's the mantra of the exploitation director, is that if less is more, then more is even more.
More is even more.
I think in this
you would have
case,
to
more should have been more. I think
I'm with you.
that only could have made this movie more entertaining. Like, not necessarily. You don't have to go like full Sharknado with it, but like,
Well, if it had turned into like The Birds, so if the flying fish started shattering all the windows and just flying through the halls of the hotel, that shit would have been scary.
Yeah, I would have bought like birds or bats as the piranha more than I bought the stupid rubber piranha being held at their people's throats. I mean,
I
just
would be
something
totally down.
that was like a thing.
Okay, for you need to decide if Nightwing is a better movie than this. So I guess we need to watch Nightwing, but which I haven't seen. But to Tony's point, I love that notion of like these big mouth bass sized fish with wings and sharp teeth flying around inside of a Hilton and like occasionally landing on the ground and just sort of scuttling along, and then they'd like get in the elevator and flap around.
Oh man,
that's scary,
just
man.
imagine,
I'm
how much more scary?
I'm kind of in between that. I'm kind of in between Tony and you.
How much scarier would it have been if you see them flying, elevator closes, you hear a bunch of screaming, elevator opens with somebody on the third floor, and just dozens of these piranha fly out, and there's just mutilated people in the elevator. Everybody on the third floor doesn't know what the hell's going on because they weren't down at the Grunion Run. And just like all of a sudden, I'm gonna go get some ice. Oh fuck! It's dozens of piranha flying out. They had that budget, that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
This would not. We would
that's
have.
That's the thing. That's the thing with me. Like, I don't like the flying piranha because I feel like that they had a great idea that they didn't pull off. Like, I like monsters. I am fully down to get behind genetically engineered flying super piranha. I just think that these piranha look hokey.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they
but
paired them with a serious plot.
Fantasy.
Yeah, they paired them again with a serious plot and then a Rodney Dangerfield comedy.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're precisely.
Man, if Rodney Dangerfield had been playing the Lance Henriksen part, this movie would have been so much better.
That was, like I said, that was Cameron's original idea, but
I love that you could have like you mentioned the guy going for ice. He opens up the ice machine and there's like piranha inside the ice machine, going through the casino.
They just look up like, what? Oh no, nothing. We're not doing anything.
They'd be like everywhere. So I'm picturing Gremlins basically. With
exactly, Gremlins would be great for this movie.
I want to see where the dude reaches into the vending machine and is just vending piranhas. Like they just fly out and pull him in.
Gremlins is the perfect model for this. That's what it should have been. It should have been Gremlins with flying piranhas.
I can't believe you're going to address that.
Still stays flying piranhas because I think that's awesome. Just swarms of them.
Yeah. All right. Anyway.
Wait, Drew was trying to work towards something there.
I think I may be broken now. Oh yeah, I have a depressing thing that I was going to bring up. I had a conversation with a young person today who did not know who the Three Stooges were. So now I'm kind of wondering. We just talked about Three's Company and Rodney Dangerfield, and I'm wondering if our younger listeners
they have no idea, but they can look it up.
Know who those? Yeah. Although I guess if they're watching Piranha 3, they might be hit. Piranha 2, they might be hit to 80s pop culture.
So two things. I had to explain that with Our Gang, which is kind of also like I understood because Little Rascals is not a thing that really shows on TV as much anymore. However, in doing the world making the world a little bit better place, Max's son Fox loves the Three Stooges and will like ask him to put them on and everything. So there's hope for the world yet because there's cool people like Max who are showing their kids the classic.
I don't want to live in a world where people don't know who the Three Stooges are.
Oh, I agree.
I really don't.
But as long as there's some solid peeps like Max, we have some hope. So
Sure.
there you go. Not
It's
few and far between, but there it is.
It would be interesting to
All right.
see an annotation somehow of these podcasts, where you'd have like just a little footnote that says Three Stooges, various groups of three comedians, through the the early to mid 20th century, and just like these little like explanations of what is that, what is that, what's our gang? It's like, oh, short films by Hal Roach.
We can also hope that if younger people are getting into horror and they're watching like maybe like Bruce Campbell and they read like his about him and Raimi and how they call out fake shimps, and then they look up what a shimp is and then they go from there.
Yeah.
We can always just hope,
Yeah.
that it'll will out, but you never know.
Never know.
We can only do what we
So
can do.
I'm fascinated by that. Another time when we have more time, we should get into the phenomenon of fake shemps. Anyway, we should get to our final thoughts on this amazing film that is Piranha 2. So I guess the order that we did this in, it was Drew, Julia, and then Tony. So Drew, Piranha 2. What an interesting movie to take into as we round the end of the summer retrospective. I don't remember what other summer retrospective movies we have, but we're coming up in the end soon if this isn't it. So what are your final thoughts on Piranha 2?
Well, it's no Creature from the Black Lagoon, but
This is true.
it's not as, I don't think it's as bad as its reputation as a really bad movie would lead you to believe. I don't know that I will ever go out of my way to watch it again. I do think it is a really interesting piece of movie history, and I think if you go into it and watch it with that mind, you will get a lot out of it. Like seeing what James Cameron started out as, and seeing the early James Cameron stuff already starting to form. And I'll stick by that. I think it's interesting to watch this movie with that in mind.
Excellent. Julia, final thoughts?
I don't have anything good to say about this movie. I mean, I wish that it would be remade.
Julia. We broke her.
I wish that it would be remade as a Gremlins movie about a hybrid between piranhas and bats. That would be great. But this is not that, and it's a very far cry from it. I did want to say
versus Llama Shark.
Piranha
versus
Yeah.
Llama Shark.
There you go. Yeah. If we can make the Fire Shark movie, we can make the Gremlins, Piranha Bat movie. Yeah, we should do that. Anyway, I'll get back to what I was going to say when we do the endorsements, actually. Okay. Yeah, Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
I actually enjoy this movie. I'm really surprised that, boner comedy and adolescent 14-year-old late night viewing doesn't resonate with Julia. I mean, I don't know what to say. I also like thinking about this dimension where Cameron wanted to make the boner comedy part, and he actually was schooled by the Italian guys, and all of the Cameronisms that you see were actually lifted from the Italian guys. I would love to live in that reality. I know it didn't happen. People probably think this is blasphemous, but in my mind, I think that's hilarious. Even though what we do have is a very in reality, we have the prototype for where Cameron goes in the future, and I think that's really fascinating. I think the design of the Piranha is really cool. I think there's a lot of great bits in a super disjointed weirdo movie that this is. And it has a fascinating poster. Actually, there's a couple of other posters. There's one with like with Anne and like this like leather scuba suit. I think maybe from Germany or somewhere. But the actual cover where they're being chased by flying piranha, I wish that was actually, I'm with Drew, I wish that was the real deal and not
one where they're on the beach, right?
Yeah.
Where they're in the yeah.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
because the poster that's in
scary.
IMDb is just a woman's legs with a bunch of flying piranha going at her.
Go to Google Images, look for the real just look up Piranha 2 spawning, and it's got the awesome posters, including the what I can guess is maybe the German one, which doesn't have much to do with anything as well. But it doesn't look like these weird slick posters that, I enjoyed it for the 80s, 81 horror movie aspects of it. But it's not one I'm just going to put in rotation all the time. That's for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. No, I don't imagine that I would watch this movie a lot, but I definitely enjoyed it. I was more on the side of enjoying it than Julia was, and mainly because I love the set. I really want more stories, just like in Jaws 3. I loved all these professionals around the water park. This is very similar to that. This is a bunch of hardcore professionals hanging out around a diving resort. Any set like that where setting like that where it's really different, I kind of enjoy. But it is a dumb as heck movie. So, very cool. I should mention actually that next week's episode is in fact a segue between the summer retrospective and the Stephen King retrospective. We're going to be doing Christine, which I think is a perfect summer film, as well as a really good Stephen King film. So let's get our endorsements. Yeah, Drew, do you have anything to endorse for us?
Yes, I do. For one, I feel like this is the first time in a long time with the endorsements. It's not kind of a half-hearted endorsement. I'm kind of all in on this. A few nights back, Jamie and I, kind of on a whim, started watching The Good Place, which is I guess it's a sitcom. It's structured like a sitcom, but it's almost veering into C.S. Lewis territory because it's also a theological fantasy. It takes place in it's got Christian Bale and Ted Danson in the lead parts, and it takes place in the afterlife. So all the characters are already dead, and Eleanor is in what they call the good place, and there's also a bad place. And she has ended up there by mistake. She actually was supposed to go to the bad place. And I hate sitcoms. I have to say that. Like, almost 99% of sitcoms, I just cannot make it through them. I really don't like sitcoms for the most part.
Okay.
This really worked for me. It's got a lot of it really makes you think about ethics and what it actually means to be a good person, and whether or not we are not rigid enough, or maybe that we're too rigid on what a good person is. And it's something that's really stayed with me, and made me think about what I actually have accomplished in my life. And it's not, there's only one season of it. It's on Netflix, and it's very much worth watching. It's also got really great art direction on it. Like, the use of color is really nice, and just everything about it's a very smartly written show, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And it actually surprised me in certain places. So I really just, everybody should go check this out. I'm kind of sad that more people aren't talking about it, because there needs to be more sitcoms like this and less stuff like what most things that are sitcoms.
Yeah, I actually second, if I remember correctly, because Rain and I watched it, and I don't think we watched all of it, it was sandwiched between other stuff we were watching. I think it just had a really bad time slot.
Yeah.
And it's way smarter than it should be. I remember really enjoying it. Now that it's all there, I think we'll have to probably go back and rewatch it and try to catch the to the end of the season.
It's a good binge. Like, it very comfortably reminded me of Dead Like Me, which was a similar show, although I actually think this is better done than that. The episodes aren't very long. They're all about 20 minutes, so it's not going to take up too much of your time, but it actually gives you stuff to think about. And I'm glad you also liked it, Tony, because I feel like this is slipped under a lot of people's radar, and I think it's a really, really smart show.
Very cool. Very, very cool. Julia, did you have anything to endorse?
I have, actually. I'm going to endorse 3 things in light of what's been going on this week. One is to please donate money, if you can at all, to the efforts in South Central, Southeast Texas, because they're sure hurting down there. My parents are in the Houston area, but fortunately they are fine. But a lot of people have not fared so well. So if you can at all afford to donate to one of the, I mean, a lot of people are saying donate clothes, but I think that gets really difficult for a lot of organizations to handle so many clothes. But money they can always use. So if you can do that, please do. The other is that Tobe Hooper died this week, so just a little, kind of a hey, in honor of Tobe Hooper, watch Poltergeist or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or something else that you enjoy.
Salem's Lot.
Sorry,
yeah.
but the one that I really want to
Salem's Lot.
The one that I really want to endorse is if you haven't been watching Twin Peaks this season, you should definitely go back and watch. Maybe not all of the episodes. I wish I could tell you which ones specifically to watch because some of them are really slow and boring. But this last one was awesome. So it's a very weird show. It's I'm sure it's not for everyone, but I'm certainly glad that I've been watching it. Although I haven't enjoyed every single episode, but most of them I've been like, this is cool. Some really serious art in this series.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, it really has been, and it's been cool to go back and watch Fire Walk with Me a little bit to see how much this new series is really as much a sequel to that film as it is a sequel to the original series. Tony, what about you? Endorsements?
I'm with Julia. Definitely a shout out to Tobe Hooper and his fantastic work in the genre. Life Force, also another one you can watch. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, amongst it being just super controversial title, perhaps more controversial than the actual movie, as far as gore and such, changed the landscape of a lot of horror, and we might not be doing what we're doing had that movie and a few others around that time had been made. So definitely a major loss. I have, we know friends who knew him and counted him as a friend, and it was a big deal. When I was covering for horror convention not too long ago, they had a cast reunion, and the cast was great. It was really pretty awesome. Also, Julia's totally correct. If you can give, I have friends in Houston. Austin, luckily, so far we haven't endured what they did, and I have a friend, Alan Cerny, who's part of a podcast called Matinee Heroes, and he used to write as Nordling on Ain't It Cool. His family, for example, today got an evacuation notice, and then they couldn't even come to Austin because everything's closed off. So it's really scary and disconcerting, and lots of people's lives are affected in terrible ways by this. So if you can give, people in Houston could really, really use the help. So whatever you can do. On the less deep, but I think in the vein of summer, I'm going to endorse something Rooster Teeth has made called Camp Camp. It's a 2D show, kind of South Park in its humor, as far as it looks like a kid's show, but it's very adult humor. I have lots of friends. I mean, I work in the animation department, so it is shilling a tiny bit, except I really, really believe I would watch the show if I wasn't working there. There are some fantastic 2D animators, and the whole team is great, and the writing team is great. Voice acting, everything. So the Camp season 2 just wrapped, which you can find on Rooster Teeth site, and then I think it goes up on YouTube if I'm not mistaken. So it's like great kind of end of summer thing, and I'm proud to know the people who produce it, and it's hilarious. Every episode's hilarious and not PC, and it's great because of that. So check out Camp Camp if you get a chance. If animation is something you dig, I think you'll really enjoy it.
Fabulous. Okay, for me, very briefly, I just want to mention I saw Bushwick, which is this new film that I think you can catch on VOD actually everywhere, with Brittany Snow and Dave Bautista, and it's about a new civil war taking place in the United States. Basically, Brittany Snow, who you might know from Pitch Perfect or Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, comes up from the subway hanging out with her boyfriend, and suddenly there are like soldiers in the streets and bombs going off, and the movie plays out almost in real time as they just move from place to place as she tries to get to her grandma's house, and she hooks up with Dave Bautista, who's trying to get to his family. And it's scary, it's very realistic, it's very sort of it's at a small scale, even as this gigantic thing is going on around them. So it plays a lot like found footage, except for that instead it's more like documentary footage as it follows them from one part of Brooklyn to another. Very cool. The movie's called Bushwick. I did an interview this week with the directors, and I learned a lot about it. But I liked it very much, so that's why I wanted to mention it on the endorsement section as well. So there we go. Okay, so next week is Christine, so you'll have to be back for that. If you've been enjoying the show, leave reviews on iTunes. We're all glad to be back in our homes after spending a crazy and wonderful week last week in Dallas. And we're so thankful that you guys are here. Come to the Facebook page. Let us know what you think. And we look forward to talking to you all this week. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being back.
Night.
Night.
Night.